everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Happy and blessed Tuesday, and welcome to episode 498 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, where tonight we're going to talk about how Furiosa has completely bombed at the box office, coming in well below projections both domestically and worldwide. And also how this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, has been one of the worst we've seen in almost 30 years, as a bit of an insight into what's currently going on box office-wise, but also just how weak the film Furiosa is. And in addition to this, we'd also have to argue, though there are some saying that things are looking really, really good for the Garfield film, it really didn't do that much money either. Now, compared to Furiosa, and especially the budget, I mean, the Garfield film is doing spectacularly. I mean, there's just no other way of saying it. The film is well on its way to making money, right? Breaking even, also being able to add overall to profitability. Whereas Furiosa, based on everything that it's done so far, is set to lose probably north of $100 million when everything is said and done. So I try to fix this microphone in real time because we love doing things here live on OMB Reviews. So we have that to talk about. And of course, summertime is here. So the summertime box office is finally happening. And oftentimes people look at Memorial Day as kind of the kickoff to the summer season in many ways, where there's historically been a lot of big films to get released over Memorial Day weekend. And if this is setting the tone for what Memorial Day, or rather what for the summer is going to be, based off of this past Memorial Day, well, things aren't going to be looking very good for the summer. The prospects of the Inside Out film, which has been having early projections of between $80 and $100 million opening domestic, not looking nearly as good as maybe it once did. And it even raises the questions of films happening later in the summer as well. Now, I wouldn't think and don't think this film is going to impact the potentiality for films like Deadpool and Wolverine, because I think that film is going to be kind of the anomaly of the summer. It's obviously got a very strong built-in fan base. It's got a very good marketing campaign going on for it right now too. And so I do think that that is going to happen in that capacity. But there's a lot of things to break down tonight, and we will go through all those numbers. Sorry if I'm a little distracted today. I am getting over being ill from this past weekend. 2 weekends in a row. Kind of crazy that it's happened at 2 weekends in a row. And also, baby Thor is still in the pie training phase, and he has been dragging his feet on wanting to use the potty today. And so my brain is also still there because he has not gone to the potty before bed today. And so the chances of him potentially having an accident are high, and that is never a good thing, especially when you think of a certain type of accident. Let's just say it's not the pee kind. Let's go ahead and say hello to the people who are hanging out in the chat, though, today. Please make sure to smash that like button. A lot of that fire button over Aussie. Smash the rumble button as well. We should also be live over on Twitter, as I have been able to set up a Twitter stream that should go live every single week. We'll see how that goes. But first, let's say hello to Keely Chow in the chat. What's going on, Keely? Welcome back to the chat. Good, sir. He also tagged to say, "Hail Odin, how are you, Lord Freya and Baby Sif doing? Everyone doing okay?" Baby Sif, of course, is still a little cherub. She's a little angel. And again, Baby Thor, love Baby Thor, but he is definitely in that three-nager stage pretty hard. He had a pretty good day. Really, the only time that he really lost it was when we were like, "All right, buddy, it's time to go to the bathroom." And he just does not like being told what to do. I wonder where he gets that from. Snortopoopus Cuber says, "How about humans and other quitters?" He also tagged. What's going on, Snortopoopus Cuber? Welcome back. We got the man with the orange hat hanging out. What's going on, orange hat? Saying, "Welcome all. Behave, keep it PG, and don't spam. Get Odin's attention by tapping at Odin." Indeed, if you have a comment or question, just put at Odin at the very beginning of your comment. Let me know that you're trying to get my attention, and I am able to highlight your comment. If you don't, I assume that you're talking to other people. Kimberly G. Killian, Shadowcat, what's going on? Kimberly G, hail to you, saying happy Tuesday, happy and blessed Tuesday to you. Welcome back to the chat. Glad to have you here as always. We got Jeremy Zakowski. What's going on, Jeremy? Getting things started with a question. I appreciate the saying hello first and good evening, but could even let a little space go by before asking questions, man. He says, "What do you think is the main reason as to why Furiosa flopped the box office?" Ultimately, as far as initial thoughts before diving fully into the Furiosa numbers, because I'm not quite ready to do that yet, I think that it comes down to, if you go back to Fury Road, that film was a bait and switch, right? That film was supposed to be a Mad Max movie. It was called Mad Max Fury Road, and it ended up being a Furiosa film, right? This movie was very clear in its purpose, which was to be a Furiosa film. However, you have enough people who were miffed by the bait and switch back with Fury Road who were like, yeah, I don't really want to see it again. The marketing wasn't really that effective either. I mean, really, there's many reasons why it flopped, so it's hard to even say there's a main reason, but I think that's probably a big one, is just a lack of interest in that IP, because that one was not able to grow their base. If you look to the box office, it dropped off pretty precipitously every single week after. It barely broke even. In fact, arguably, it didn't break even because of where it made most of its money. It made a huge portion of its money internationally, and because it made a huge portion of its money internationally, it means it got a lot smaller cut from those international numbers. And take into account just the raw totals, it made about 2.5 times its budget. So when you're at that 2.5 number, but most of your money is coming from international markets, that's not a good thing. So if it made anything, it would have been on PVOD. It would have been on Blu-ray and 4K sales, especially at that time back in 2015. PVOD would not be as prominent as it is now in the post-COVID era especially. And Blu-ray and 4K sales would have been a lot more prominent because it did get nominations, right? Really the thing that I think made Furiosa even possible was the fact that Fury Road was a very well-made movie, right? Technically speaking, it was beautiful. It got a lot of Oscar nomination buzz. It got a lot of award season buzz. And so that's what was able to justify what is arguably a box office loss. This movie is not going to have any of that because this film is not going to get anywhere close to breaking even. And if it gets any awards consideration, it'll just continue to show how much of a joke many of these award shows have become, which would be on brand. So I can't really say I would be surprised if it did happen. Anyway, we got G-Monkey76, hail to you, G-Monkey. We got Shorty Short, Laura, the Modern Major General, hanging out in the channel. Carl Jacobs, what's going on? Cthulhu, who is a member on the channel, hail to you. Thanks for being here. Over on Rumble, we got Horror Stream. What's going on, Horror Stream? We've got Forever Sci-Fi, who's a member, hail to you. Kinkan Rumsky on Rumble. Hail to you. Thank you very much for being here. Keely Chow, tag to say, you're now 2 shows away from 500. We're so close. So close to episode 500. Abomination says, apparently I watched random videos and streams for 20 days for this super chat. Well, hey, there you go. I didn't even know that was a thing over on Odyssey. So congratulations, I guess, are in order. Appreciate that. I guess it's because doesn't Odyssey, you get like credits for watching certain videos for certain lengths of time. I used to know the Odyssey system a lot more, but it's kind of gone downhill quite a bit over the past years now at this point, since I've been streaming over there. But thank you very much for watching. And actually, fun fact, so I typically over the summer, because that's another part of the title, is the summer box office, but also announcing officially on stream the summer schedule. So as of right now, I'm only going to be doing one morning stream. So that's going to be Wednesday morning, starting tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern. So that should be a lot better for my European peeps, as I know there's a large portion or a pretty big portion of the audience that is international. And so that should be better for y'all as far as the time is concerned. For those that are United States based, I apologize. It'll either be really, really early for you or we'll be in the middle of the workday. But either way, we'll just be doing one show a week, 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern on the channel. And in the past, what I've done is I've labeled those the Good Morning Asgard podcast, and I had a separate platform for it. I've just decided I'm just streamlining everything. And so we're going to have tomorrow be episode 499 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast. It is going to still be the Good Morning Asgard edition, but what that means is that next week, next Tuesday, will be episode 500. So next Tuesday will actually be episode 500. Stay tuned for more. Let's see. Rob D says, hello, Odin. I watched Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and The Meg 2 this weekend. One of those I thought was good. The other I have no interest in. I'll let you guess as to which is the case. Kagan Rumsky over on Rumble says, what do you think it would take for people to go back to the movies again? Oh, man, I think that we have a great example of what is going to bring people back to the movies again, and it's coming out later this summer, and it's called Deadpool Wolverine, all right? And what's going to bring people out are going to be things that audiences actually want, right? Properties, stories that people actually want to watch, stories that actually look like they're going to be entertaining enough for me to want to go see in theaters. movies that actually feel like a movie-going experience is merited, right? Where you know other people are going to be going. You know that you're going to be in a movie theater with a bunch of other people, right? And so I think that it is something very important for us to consider, right? Something very important for us to consider, that the audiences today, if they're going to spend that much money on a movie ticket, want to have that level of an experience. And what has done very well over the years, especially after COVID, concerts, right? What's unique about concerts is this live atmosphere. You're around a bunch of people who have the same passion that you do. Movies used to have that to a certain degree, right? I remember back in the day when it was primarily the midnight screenings for early days MCU, right? And what I remember about those movies, what I remember about those experiences was the fact that it was very easy to get caught up in the moment, right? It was very easy to have the entire audience laughing and hemming and hawing all at the same time, right? And the movies used to be able to do that. But nowadays, they are not, right? Nowadays, none of the films feel like event films. The idea of the tentpole, I think, this is probably the one area where we can see a genre actually destroying another industry concept, right? Everyone's understood the industry concept of a tentpole film, right? The tentpole film has always been the film that a studio has, or multiple films that a studio has, that are meant to be the big moneymaker, right? The thing that can bring a bunch of people, a bunch of normies into the auditoriums in order to spend a lot of money, to make a lot of money, and that's where you're able to not only afford the film you've just made, but also fund a lot of your other projects in the future, right? That tentpole item. The problem is that Disney decided to take the hot commodity, which was superhero movies, right? The MCU. And you could even say to a certain degree Star Wars, but there's a lot of other things going, like, MCU is a much better example. Think about how many MCU films have been made over a short period of time. I mean, we've been living in an era now where we've been getting 2 to 3 films every single year. During COVID, we got not only that, but we also got a bunch of TV shows as well. And so what they decided to do was take a bunch of IP, right, a bunch of superhero content, and decide just to take all of it, right, to take all of it, and to then just say temple. And so I think what's happened is just that the audience has gotten overwhelmed with content, but then add to that it used to be that tentpole films used to at least be entertaining. And since now they've gone to the well so many times, what we've ended up getting is we've gotten a bunch of very poorly constructed films. So not only have they destroyed comic book movies, superhero movies, but they've also destroyed tentpole films. Right? They've also destroyed tentpole films and tentpole items as well. So that's a very key component, I think, to a lot of this also. What say you? All right, let's see. Keely Shah says, in my Scott Steiner voice, you see the numbers don't lie, and they spell Disaster Furiosa a Mad Max saga. They indeed do. They absolutely indeed do. All right, let's see. Star Goose says, greetings and blessings. Greetings to you over on Rumble. Thanks for being here. Carl Jacob says, good weekend for me. I got to see Zone of Interest, exceptional film. Of course, it wasn't made by Hollywood. Yeah, I did get to see Zone of Interest. A very interesting concept. I think a bit overrated. And by that, I don't mean that it's a bad movie by any means. It's a very solid film, but I don't think it's as amazing as some people think it is. I think the concept is a bit bigger than the actual movie itself. For those who don't know, it's talking about an actual accounting of a Nazi soldier whose house was right next to Auschwitz. And so the entire film, you see the wall of their garden is the wall shared with Auschwitz. So you're hearing a lot of things, right, in the background throughout the entirety of the movie. So as they're trying to live this regular, normal, everyday life, you also are hearing some of the things that are basically insinuating the horrors that are going on. But I think that, again, that concept can only go so far, because at the end of the day, you do also have to have an interesting film in front of that. And I don't think the film in front of that was that interesting at all. I think they could have done a little bit better of a job, I think, in that story. I thought the concept was brilliant, but again, a concept is not enough to make, an entirely great film. Andrew Hayes says, hello to you. Welcome back. We got Gary at Banjo Sandwich Worthington saying, hi, brother, got a week off with a bad back. I hope you get to watch some cool films and shows on break. Dude, so sorry to hear that. Hope that you heal up very, very quickly. Yeah, we are in full summer mode. Official first day of summer for me. So I got to get a bunch of stuff done. Got to get the giveaways going on the giveaways channel for my Keeper of the Bifrost members and above. So check that out if you have been missing that part of the Discord server for a little bit. I have also been able to get some stuff done around the house and working on some ideas for future box office articles and videos. And of course, the stream coming up for the Good Morning Asgard edition of the Welcome to Asgard podcast. Let's see. Rob D at 736 says, Tony from Deadline, Furiosa is the highest grossing Mad Max film to be released in the past 5 years. This movie is a massive success. Pretty much. I still go back to that headline, right? Tony was saying $80+ million opening weekend for Furiosa, $30 million domestic opening for Garfield. And the reality is that, oh no, it was only expected to do $40 million, but it didn't even do that. And with that being said, let's go ahead and just dive into it, because if you want to see why we can say without any shadow of a doubt that Garfield has had the last laugh with this, we now have the official Monday numbers, all right, the official Monday reports. And this also gives us a good idea of how films like Garfield and If are going to likely do over the long-term holiday frame, whereas we also know how films like Furiosa are probably going to do also. All right, so let's look at these Monday numbers from thenumbers.com. And as you can see, what came in number one on Memorial Day? Oh boy, the number one film on Memorial Day was not Furiosa. In fact, Furiosa wasn't even the number two film on Memorial Day. The number one film was Garfield with 7.2 million, dropping only 2% from the day before. It's a very strong hold from a Sunday to Monday, right? If actually went up 8% from its Sunday, making $6.1 million, whereas Furiosa dropped all the way to third place already. That's right, third place for Furiosa, a film that just came out, $168 million budgeted film, supposed to be a huge box office sensation, didn't actually happen, didn't come out that way, right? $6 million, almost $6 million even, dropping 21% in its fourth day of release. So that means it dropped 21% from Sunday to Monday. Now, whereas a typical Sunday to Monday drop, that's pretty good. When we remember that Memorial Day is a holiday for most people, that is very bad. Again, look at what did well. Garfield dropped 2%, right? As a new film, dropping that much on a Monday is very good. The film If apparently saw a bit of a second life. Apparently some people who had been maybe waiting to bring their kids out on a holiday showing because they were waiting for school to get out, they were waiting for an actual day when they might also be off from work, because just because the kids are out of school does not mean that everyone who's working is out, for instance. Hey, that 8% increase seems to indicate that that is probably what happened. And again, it would not surprise me if that is the reason why we saw that increase specifically with that film. 21% drop for Furiosa, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes dropping 14%, Fall Guy dropping 6%. So as you can see, these are all pretty much standard as far as drops are concerned. 19% increase for Angel Studios' new film Sight. And again, that makes some sense too because of the fact that it is a day off for a lot of people. But let's just dive into why this is really, really bad news for Furiosa. Okay, so remember, this film cost $168 million to make. That means based off of the current amount of money that we're seeing being reported, right, around $64 million the film has made worldwide. Again, it was supposed to make $80 million over the course of its 4 days worldwide. And so far, it's only made $64.8 million. Not a good look whatsoever. Based off of typical costs and the typical way that we analyze these things, right now it's looking at $213 million in the red. That just means at current pace, right? At this point in time, if the film was to drop out of theaters altogether, that means ultimately it would be $200+ million in the red. Now, let's go further into this though, because remember, that's not taking into account the fact that it gets only 55% of the domestic box office, only about 40% of the international box office without China. Now, as of the stream, there is no official China number yet. I don't know exactly when or if the film is getting released there. I'm pretty sure that it is. And if it is, it's going to be probably in the next couple weeks. But that means, as of right now, at $64.8 million, the film's actually closer to $221 million in the red. So not only is this film tracking $20 million or so behind where the initial estimates were worldwide, When you look at the domestic, it's actually even worse, right? The film was supposed to be making around $40 million domestically after 4 days. Some charting had it as high as 50 to 55 million. It actually only ended up making about 26 or so million over the 3 days, and in fact, barely beat out the Garfield number. So we mentioned before about Garfield beat it out on that Monday, but let's go ahead and look at the chart for this past weekend, okay? Just the 3-day weekend, you can see Garfield at $24 million, Furiosa at $26 million. So Furiosa had about a $2 million advantage, and because of the fact that Garfield actually had a $2 million or so advantage on the first Monday, it got very close to actually taking the weekend, taking the full 4-day holiday weekend. Look at the difference here between the two movies, okay? $31.2 million domestic. That's the 4-day total domestically for Garfield. $32.3 million for Furiosa. 32.3 versus 31.2. That's not a big difference between those two movies, right? So we're talking about Garfield almost so very close to dethroning it for the entire 4-day frame, but at the very least, it won Memorial Day. Garfield won Memorial Day easily by about 1.2. So I said 2 million, sorry, 1.2 million, but still enough to where we're looking at these numbers saying, oh boy, Furiosa's in a huge amount of trouble because the international market's not showing up for this movie. The domestic market's not showing up for this movie. And because of the fact that this movie is tracking so far behind that of the original release, right? That of, and by I say original release, I mean, of course, the 2015 film, as this is pretty much a follow-up to that part of the story versus the previous ones, historically, the far superior movies. But what's most interesting, too, is when you look at the actual estimated ticket sales. So as you all know, I like to do things based off of inflation, but also I like to look at things as far as ticket sales are concerned. So let's just go ahead and put these in there. So again, going into the weekend, there were thoughts of it being closer to 30, 40, $50 million domestically. So just based off of, let's just make sure these numbers are accurate too. So let's go back to the weekend reports here from thenumbers.com. So it said 26.3 million for the 3 days. All right, so let's go ahead and update that in the chart. So $26.3 million. Okay, so compared then to Fury Road, the average ticket sales for this weekend domestically means that Furiosa sold roughly 2 million tickets, okay? 2 million tickets roughly, versus the 5.3 million tickets that were sold by Fury Road. So that means almost a third, right? So well more than half, but almost a third of what was sold by Fury Road was sold by Furiosa. Like Furiosa sold about a third of the tickets that were sold by Fury Road. Now, we also remember that this is based off of an average ticket price around $13. Now, when it comes to Furiosa, guess what? It's got a huge portion of those PLF screens, right? It has a huge portion of those IMAX screens, right? Garfield has a couple here and there, but most of them are towards Furiosa. So that means that average ticket price for Furiosa is probably even higher than that, which is why even though the amount of money that Furiosa made is higher, because of how close those two films are for the total weekend, for the total 4-day weekend, there's an argument to be made that Garfield still had more tickets sold to it than Furiosa did. So even though the money battle may have been won by Furiosa, the true battle was actually indeed won by the Garfield film of all things. But again, adjusted for inflation, $26.3 million is nothing compared to the 3-day total that was made back in 2015. And even if you unadjusted for inflation, that film back in 2015 still had an opening weekend of $45 million. Okay? So we're talking almost a $20 million difference with the unadjusted numbers. So whether it's $20 million, whether it's closer to $30 million, or whether it is a difference between 3.3 million tickets difference between these two films. We're talking about a film in Furiosa that has a long way to go, and as of right now, has no real path, has no real course to being able to break even. I just do not see it happening. What say you? Let's dive into the chat. Let's see, at 736 says, was going to see Furiosa over the weekend, but saw War of the Planet of the Apes and The Little Things, both excellent films. If by The Little Things, okay. I hope that you don't mean like the poor little things. I hadn't heard of The Little Things before. Is that a film from 2021? The Little Things from 2021? I didn't know that that would be out in theaters. I've heard mixed things about War for Planet of the Apes, so I have no interest in seeing it myself. Tina Guzman, what's going on? Tina, welcome back. Says, evening, Odin, wonderful chat. Indeed, it is a wonderful chat. Luke Zilla in the chat, hail to you. Cthulhu says, that bad CGI trailer did not help. Thought it was a cash grab when that released. And that's the other thing, too, right? My objective criticism of Furiosa is how poorly done the effects are. I mean, and this is coming off of Fury Road, which still wows me. I know that a lot of people hate that movie. I think if people were going to be honest, right, because I think a lot of people hate the movie and they come up with objective reasons why they hate it. But I think if they were honest, they would say the reason why they hate it is because it's not a Mad Max movie and it had Mad Max in the title and they don't like that. And again, that's a valid criticism, but that's still a subjective criticism, okay? As far as a movie itself, it's actually very well done. The stunt work is phenomenal. The cinematography is really solid, right? There's a lot of really good technical things going on throughout the course of the movie, right? That's not the case in this movie. Not only do you have a very boring, long, bloated story, you then also have some really poorly rendered effects. I mean, the use of green screen alone in this movie is so egregious that there's times when it honestly feels like you can see the green screen. Like it almost honestly feels like there are certain moments that have not actually been fully rendered even. And it's just kind of amazing that we live in a world and we live at a time when that could potentially happen, where a film could actually be non-rendered in that way. It was very poorly put together, very poorly edited. There were a couple of moments where you could actually feel the edits. And I've always said, if you can feel the edits in a movie and it's not in the natural sense of one thing flowing to the next, yeah, if you feel the story flowing, that's one thing. But if you feel the edits going from one to the other, that's never a good thing. Liberty Fella over on Rumble. What's going on, Liberty Fella? Says, have a feeling Deadpool and Wolverine will make Guardians 3 box office, but not $1 billion. Ticket prices will keep many people like me away who don't like Deadpool enough to plop down $13. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely a lot to be said for that, right? That there's going to be fan people. There are definitely members of the audience that have been lost, right? There are fans, people who used to be fans of Deadpool, people who used to be fans of the MCU, who it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to bring them back. However, we have to still admit that when it comes to Deadpool, and especially when it comes to Ryan Reynolds, and the way, and I actually put it more so to this than anything else, the way that they are marketing that film is very, very good. They're using very effective marketing at this point. The fact that the film comes out in July and pre-sales, for instance, were already available as of a couple weeks ago, that's really good. The fact that going to see Furiosa right before the film starts, you have an amazing segment where it's Deadpool and Wolverine talking to each other, looking at you in the cinema and cursing you out for your phone going off. That's good marketing because it's going after the target demographic, right? It's pushing that R rating. They clearly want an adult audience to show up for it. And we know that adult audiences will show up for rated R films when they feel like it's worth going to see, right? In the case of Joker, because of how effective the movie was, how good the movie was, that film got to be over $1 billion franchise, right? Over $1 billion film, I should say, right? Was able to push forward the potential for their second film. I don't think the second film is going to make nearly as much, but I honestly think people might be surprised with how much money, if the trailers continue to be either good or mysterious, and if the film itself, of course, is also good, if it's as good as the first one, it might surprise people. I'm not saying it's going to make $1 billion, but I think it might actually do better than expectations. The same is right now being said, at least for me, by the upcoming Deadpool film, because when you look at the franchise, right, when you look at Deadpool's numbers, it's not really $1 billion franchise, okay? Even when you adjust the numbers that have been made by the first two Deadpool films, neither one on their own makes it to $1 billion if my memory serves, right? Even when you adjust it for inflation. They've still been very successful. As rated R films especially, they've been very successful. They've got their niche audience. So I think that when we look to the other two Deadpool films, we can say, all right, here's where our most likely scenario is going to be, right? I think that's going to be that static number. That $600 to $800 million range, I think, is very likely where that film is going to end up. Now, if the marketing continues on how it's doing, if they're able to build up the hype to it, I'm not going to lie. There are definitely some Spider-Man No Way Home vibes. And regardless of how you feel about that specific movie, you can't deny the box office impact that that film had. People were excited for that one. There was a buzz around it. People were like, oh man, are they going to have all of Spider-Man back? Wait, I get to see Tobey on screen again. Some people even said, I get to see Andrew Garfield on screen again. I get to see all three of them on screen again. That sounds awesome. I want to be there for that, and I don't want it spoiled. Guess what? Now you're having a similar mindset. It's a different audience because, again, PG-13 audience for No Way Home versus a rated R audience. Those are still very different demographics. This is also one of those movies, not that it's that much of an important metric or one that one can even quantify, but you also remember that it used to be back in the day when a very good or popular or seemingly popular rated R film was going to come out, a lot of teenagers would try to go see it, would try to sneak in, would try to do whatever they could to go see the movie, right? I feel like that's become a lot less common in today's world because most kids just want to stay at home on TikTok all day, so they don't really want to go see the movies. This is the kind of film that I think could even motivate that crowd. So whether that's quantifiable, there's no metric that I could possibly use to say. But what I can say is I think that film is going to probably do, if not Guardians numbers, it could even do better. And the fact that it's a rated R film, especially if it's even doing close to those numbers, would be very, very good, a good showing from them. It's not going to make much of a difference for the box office in total, but it could still be a very big show. Forever Sci-Fi says, I'd rather watch an origin story for Coma Doof Warrior than Furiosa. Wow. Okay, well, he said it here, everybody. That was all Forever Sci-Fi. Let's see. Laura says, Furiosa didn't offer anything unique, just more of the same. Agreed. And that's the thing is that some people have kind of been going off on the whole girl boss thing, and the movie itself really isn't. I mean, there's a moment in the beginning that maybe you have that mindset. Maybe you have a character that seems to show that, but ultimately you're seeing characters that have flaws, right? And that's why we could argue that there is maybe some feministic qualities in the movie, right? Some feminism qualities in the movie, but I don't think that there's a lot of the girl boss stuff, right? There really isn't, because what you have are flawed characters that have to grow. Things are mostly within reason, right? For instance, you don't see Furiosa flipping around Chris Hemsworth's character or anyone else's character, right? And if anything, the only times that they're ever equal is behind the wheel, which I think is much more of a realistic take than going hand-to-hand in combat, for instance. But I digress. I do agree, though, it really doesn't offer anything unique because it's like, okay, and what I think was even funnier, going more so to Laura's point here, is and I think I mentioned on if I didn't mention it on FNT, I mentioned it in the Salty Saturday stream the other day, that in the credits for the movie, they show you clips from Fury Road. And the fact that the clips from Fury Road were more impressive than the stunts they did in this movie says everything you need to know about it. So think of it as Fury Road was truly the last hurrah of that director, right? That was the last hurrah. That was him doing everything he could, pulling out all the stops. This movie just didn't have it. Not even the biggest scenes they had were anywhere close to the action scenes that were in Fury Road, right? Everything felt so real and authentic in that movie, even when there was use of green screen, even when there was use of CG. It at least felt real. It felt authentic. Almost every moment of Furiosa feels fake. And that's why I feel bad for any of the stunt persons involved, because there might be stunt men and stunt women who are doing these stunts for real, but you would never have known because of the green screen, because of how digitized the entire movie looks. It objectively just does not look very good at all. Let's see. Kaylee Chow tagged to say, it would also be good for the rest of Geeks Gamers crew because Geeks Gamers Daily starts at 10 a.m. Central Time. Not that it matters a whole lot, because I mean, I specifically do it from 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern because I don't want to cross over anyone else, because I'm respectable like that. I don't like to cross over other people's stream time. But if it works for any of them, great. Hardwick says, so the movie is full of sound and Furiosa signifying nothing. Pretty much. It's a great way of putting it. CM Chunk had to say, it looks like that Mission Impossible 8 budget is spiraling out of control. I didn't see any reports on that, but based off of the budget for the last movie, it would not surprise me. And if the last film is any indication, they're not going to be able to make enough because they already are operating at a loss thanks to the last movie. Now, they did get a huge help because one of the countries that they filmed in, maybe it was the UK, they got almost $100 million, I think, in tax breaks from the film. Or maybe it was like some COVID insurance, or maybe it was an insurance company. Like they actually got some payment for because of the delays, like ballooning their cost. It still, I think, cost close to $100 million, even making as much as it did, which was still not a whole lot. Rob D says, there haven't been any event films lately because all the big franchises are either over or should be over, but Hollywood won't let it end. That's a great point. King and Rumsky says, just watched Midnight's Edge live stream. Most of the panel, including Tom, said The Beekeeper was good, their favorite movie of the season, no joke. I mean, look, it's definitely not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but to say that it's the best movie so far this year? Heck no. Heck no. Wayward Noodle, hail to the chat. Hail to you, Wayward Noodle. Welcome. Abomination had to say, I bet theaters could draw people to the theaters by showing movies from the 60s through 90s that might not be on streaming services. Might also be interesting in news because studios would be doing everything to block the showing because those movies are better than modern remakes and reboots. Yeah, I mean, there's always a mixed bag with that, though, because even though sometimes you have, the re-releases, for instance, you look to the re-releases that they have done for the Star Wars movies, the fact that you're going to have a re-release of the Lord of the Rings extended editions. As good as those movies are going to do, they're not going to be gangbuster numbers, right? You're not talking about breaking records for total money in a day, right? It might break a record for total money in a day for a film that's been out for X amount of years, right? The typical stats and typical records that Tony at Deadline might try to pull out, right? But I mean, that's the problem is that, yeah, people will show up for those things, maybe even show up more for those things than some new releases, but that would not be enough to keep movie theaters afloat. It would not be enough to make up for the lost revenue, because ultimately people would like to say, there might be some people would say, oh, I want to see that movie on the big screen again. Most people, though, would say, why would I want to spend more money to go out to a theater to see a movie I can already see because I already own it? And in today's world especially, think about how much easier it is to get a 50-inch television, 60, 70-inch television, to get a good sound system, to where you really don't even have to go to a theater to get that theater experience anymore. Ryan Liu says, how are you doing? Do you think Furiosa can have legs like Elemental? No, not at all. Not at all. Elemental over time showed us, and remember, the only reason why Elemental had legs was because it had a staggered release worldwide. It's not because the film had very strong holds all throughout. The big reason as to why it had quote-unquote legs was because it had a very staggered release internationally. So it gave it the same look, the same effect, but ultimately Elemental was still also not that impressive. In fact, let me see if I have that. I'm currently working on a project to talk about the biggest box office flops of 2023, the biggest box office grosses of 2023. So let me see if I can find Elemental. I think that might unfortunately be one of the films that is still loading for some reason. That's the problem when you try and do some of these automated things, is that there's so many of them trying to automate all of the information, all of the data at the same time, and then it's not able to do so. But with that being said, let me see if I can at the very least try and do some general estimates. So domestically, it had $154 million. Yeah, so this is the reason why you have to take these numbers with a giant grain of salt with it. Oh, it legged out. It made $154 million domestic, but then it made $342 million international. And a lot of that international take was over a long period of time. But remember, that means close to 70% of the entire box office was made internationally, okay? So let's just do some rough math on this since my charting is just not working for some reason. So $342 million internationally. So that would be, let's see, $342 million that only gets 40% of. So of that $342 million, the studio would only get about $136 million of that, okay? And I need to double check and see if that is actually in China. So it got about $15 million in China, of which it only got 25%. Okay. So let's just assume, let's be fair and say it may maybe only $130 million internationally. Okay. You then take the 154, right? It makes about 55% of that. So that's about $61 million. So in total, we're looking at around $192 million in total gross. All right. Now you have to take into account how much money that movie cost to make. And that movie cost, what, $200 million production budget at least? Yep. So it actually, in profits, in the net from domestic international, did not recoup what it spent on the film. When you take into account the actual data, right, of how much it gets domestically, how much it gets internationally. So that film was a box office flop. So even though it did have a longer run down the line, it's because of the staggered international release. And that's one of the worst places to make the biggest portion of your money, because you're getting so little back on those investments. So again, that's quick math. So if there's any mistakes, please let me know. But that's how we do things when the charts aren't working. All right, let's see. Abomination says, Furiosa beats a fat orange cat by like 500,000. We got Flav in the chat. What's going on, Flav or Flav? Welcome. Abomination, 1.3 million. Ryan Liu says, how are you doing? Ryan Liu, don't double post. Do not double post, Ryan. Especially if you're going to show up late to the chat. Come on, brother. You know better. You've been in the chat before. You know better. King Rumsky says, doesn't Furiosa sound like a lame wrestling name gimmick? It does. The fact that her name from the beginning is Furiosa, like that would have been a really cool story element. You could have literally given us the backstory as to how she got the name Furiosa. That actually would have been interesting. It would have been different than when Star Wars said, hey, let's tell you how I got the name Han Solo. No. That's stupid. But Furiosa, when you have a name like Furiosa, I'm sorry, but some context into your backstory is well warranted in that instance. Andrew Hayes says, Little Things was a crime thriller with Denzel Washington in it. Okay, so it was the film for 2021. Interesting. Hardwick says, Jonathan Pigot and ER did good jobs breaking down the Fury Road symbolism and how subversive and anti-male its messaging is. Again, people can try to do that, and I think that there's a lot more feminism Fury, because again, my commentary initially was about Furiosa specifically, right? People who are going off about that film being girl boss, not really in that instance. I think girl bossness in Fury Road really isn't there, but feminism, absolutely, right? There's feminism also in Furiosa too, okay? So I definitely think that there's an argument to say that in Fury Road, oh, big time. The fact that Mad Max takes a back seat to everything is evidence of that. It's still a good movie. Robbie says, it seems no one in the film making business wants to pay for talent in the VFX department, or at least give the department time to work. Yeah, and if you want a great example of that, guess what? It's called Godzilla -1. $15 million budget, and the effects looked phenomenal. And it's not because they had any better technology than anyone else. It's because they were living within their means, and it's because they had an actual passion for the work that they were doing. They weren't either being treated like or acting like a machine. And that's why what's going to be very interesting over the course of the next decade is how AI technologies start to come in to replace these VFX factories. Because once that happens, I think what you're going to find is these budgets theoretically should go down quite a bit. Because most of the money that's being spent on these films' production budgets, it's not because of on-location shooting. It's not because of practical effects. It's because of CGI. And how much money the unions, specifically, charge for that, and also how very few places you can actually go. But what happens when you do things more independently? Look at what happens when you have Godzilla -1, as an example. Will Riker, what's going on? Horror Stream, welcome. Again, please put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. @Odin lets me know you're trying to get my attention. I can highlight your comments then at that point. If not, then I will assume that you're talking to someone else. Let's see. Orange Hat says, while I think Anya Taylor-Joy has talent and potential, I don't really go to the theater much anymore. Yeah, and she's really the only reason to go see it. Because I thought she was great. Because she's great in every single thing that she does. And I thought that she was wonderful. I much prefer her to that insane person that is Charlize Theron. If you want to know why she's insane, just look up Charlize Theron and her kids. She is an insane person who should not have custody of her kids. I'm just going to be flat out with that, because it's abuse going on right now, emotional, mental going on with what she's doing with her kids. It's insane. Anya Taylor-Joy, on the other hand, I have no idea where she stands politically. I have no idea where she stands on certain rainbow issues. And guess what? That's a good thing. We shouldn't know those things. Those things shouldn't be at the forefront of these people's lives. It should be all about the performance. And guess what? That's what we get from them. We get the performance from people like Anya Taylor-Joy every time. Victor Fontaine says, the pre-sales for Deadpool 3 equal Doctor Strange. Half of Spider-Man No Way Home. That would put Deadpool 3 between 900 million and $1 billion. Well, that's the thing, Victor Fontaine. Never, ever, 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 ever trust pre-sales. Pre-sales are fool's gold, okay? Pre-sales only tell you a part of the story. Because all the pre-sales will tell you is, oh, these are the number of people that were already planning on seeing the film who want to get their ticket now. It does not account for walk-up. And a large portion of the audience, even now in 2024, a large portion of the audience is still walk-up audience. So you can have all the pre-sales in the world. That does not mean that you're going to make money. I still remember back when it was Solo: A Star Wars Story was coming out. And I remember there were reports about, oh man, the pre-sales for this film, I forget if it was the first day or if it was the first week, but they were using some metric to try to say how impressive it was. And guess what? Didn't mean a dang thing. Ended up being a massive flop, losing hundreds of millions of dollars. And I can't say I'm surprised. So never, ever, ever take the pre-sales as gospel, and never think that they are the end-all, be-all. They are only a part of the equation. Now, is it a good sign? Is it a positive sign? Yes, absolutely. But it's not a guarantee. King Adrumsky says, Ned, Peter, answer ×3. Yes. Ned, no, Peter Parker, answer yes, exactly. Those are fun moments that people thoroughly enjoyed. Amazing Baking Soda. Even if Furiosa's post-apocalyptic world, Garfield's the boss. Pretty much. Justin C., what's going on? Cthulhu, thank you for tagging again. If you have a comment or question, just put @Odin. Just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. So let's see. Cthulhu, now that The Beekeeper was mentioned, I can think of 6 excellent movies released by now in 2023, but I can't think of one this year. Was there any excellent released yet? Let's see. That's a very good question. Let me look at because my memory is never good, even on the best of days. So let me look at my own reviews. Let's see. I think the Fall Guy was better than Beekeeper. Okay? I wouldn't put it as my best film of the year, but if we're talking about what's better than Beekeeper, Fall Guy absolutely is better than Beekeeper. Beekeeper's fine, but it's not phenomenal. This is a controversial take, but I think the film Civil War is a lot better than Beekeeper. It's a better film. Just objectively speaking, it's a better film. Let's see. I don't know if this film counts as 2024 or not. Okay. But the film with Anthony Hopkins, One Life, that's up there for my top films of the year list. There's a question of release date, because official release date in 2023 makes it a 2023 release. But if not, that absolutely would be probably my top film for 2024 at this point. Let's see. Oh man. So I'm on my critic list account, and now I've gotten to the point in my reviews when I was posting a bunch of older reviews. Let's see. Cabrini was fantastic. Cabrini was solid. I'd put Cabrini up there in my top films of the year list. Oh, man. This is the one thing I can't wait for them to add, because they're always adding in new things, and I can't wait for them to add ways of being able to better filter out like reviews from X year versus reviews from previous years. Because, yeah, I was trying to add a lot of reviews from previous years. As you can tell, like, we're still going through a bunch of films from previous years in this way. But I've just pointed out a few that I thought were better than that film. Oh, man. Let's see. There's Beekeeper. Again, it was fine. It was rad. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's still not a good film. There's a couple documentaries that were pretty good this year. It really isn't, again, if we're going to be honest, there's not a lot of very good films. Like, there really aren't a lot of very good films to come out this year. That is absolutely a fact that we can look to. Oh, man. Okay, I think we're getting close to running out of time in the... Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I would say Cabrini is a much better film. I would put Civil War as being a better film. The Fall Guy as being a better film as well. And keep in mind, just because those are the only good films to come out does not mean that you automatically put them in your top 5. Like, if I was to have to make a top 5 right now, and then also the film One Life, if I was to make a top list right now, I would be putting Cabrini in my top list. I'd be putting One Life into my top list. And I would probably be putting, to be honest, I would probably be putting Civil War into my top list as well. The more I think about Civil War, the more I like it. The more I like it. As a controversial as an opinion as that might be. J.S. Pena, what is going on? Welcome back. Welcome. Elemental went over 500 million. Yeah, I mean, that was according to Box Office Mojo. It's one of the reasons why I typically don't use boxofficemojo.com. It's not always the most accurate, but I think ultimately, though, the numbers are still going to be the same. Let's see. So if that one said it was almost $500 million, let's see. The numbers only has it at 484. So actually, the higher number is being given over at Box Office Mojo. So did it actually get over $500 million? And according to who did it get over $500 million at the box office? Because guess what? Using the two biggest sites, Box Office Mojo and the numbers, it's under 500, and doesn't matter. It's still lost a lot of money. Prince Green says, sorry, I'm late. Hope I haven't missed too much. Oh, always. When it comes to me, you always miss a lot, okay? And there's a big reason as to why, because anytime you're talking to me about box office, this is what's going on in my head.
Time to see a real mathematician at work.
Every time, okay? So, all right, let's see. Ryan Lewis says, did you hear about the Mission Impossible 8 having a submarine mishap? Do you think the movie will get delayed again? I did not hear about that. I typically don't follow a lot of that news live as it happens because I have a life outside of the internet. So I tend to hear those things a little bit later than others, but wouldn't surprise me. Oh, right, Victor Vartain. Yep, that's what I thought. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Again, if one of those two doesn't have the number, then it's not going to be there. Let's see. King Eruption says, what's better, quick math of Puff's math? Quick math or Puff's math? Puff's math's always the best. Always got to love the Puff's math. Abomination says, I think theaters could take up the challenge. It's not likely that people would have every quality movie not available on streaming. I don't know what's available on streaming services, so I'll probably guess. But movies like Jackie Chan's Legend of Drunken Master and The Young Master. Again, that's just the problem, though, Abomination, because though there is a point to be made that not every streaming service has every movie, that does not mean that the people who would want to see it don't already own the movie, right? Because streaming only takes into account those that stream everything, which is it's a huge portion of people, for sure. But think about also how many people own things, right? Even though some studios have abandoned physical media in different ways, and obviously stores like Best Buy have abandoned it, it's still a very big market, right? And DVDs are still a huge portion of the overall sales, right? I know that Victor Fontaine has posted a lot about this, right? That I think we are finally at a point now where it's like what Blu-rays, 4Ks, or Blu-rays especially are getting to the point where they're a very large portion of the market. But DVDs have for a long time been, if not the biggest market share, one of the biggest market shares, at least one of the biggest market shares, right? And that is because of culture, because of pricing. There's just, again, a lot of things there that could explain it. Drives me nuts because DVD quality is just so trash compared to Blu-ray quality. It's insane. less of a jump between Blu-ray and 4K, but there is still a jump. It's just not as significant of a jump. Anyone who's a physical media person probably knows what I'm saying when I talk about that. But because people own a lot of these things, right? People would say, okay, yeah, I could go see that in theaters. That'd be great to see that in theaters again, but I already own it, right? So it wouldn't just be, oh, I already have it on Netflix or I already have it on Amazon. It's, oh, I actually own the physical disc, which is, by the way, something that everyone should be doing at this point, because there's going to come a point when the streaming services collapse and all that's left is Netflix, or, I think Netflix survives. HBO Max would be one of the survivors too. There might be maybe one or two others that could survive the crash, but I think that there will at some point be a crash just because of lack of content. Because eventually, and we already see it to a certain degree, right? The licensing of content that should be on one platform is being licensed to Netflix instead, because they're not making money off of it on their own platforms. So you're already seeing that to a certain degree. And I think that's why it's important for us to start just, again, collecting our own media. That way we always have access to it. Carl Jacob says, I heard this year's finale of Doctor Who is going to be shown in theaters. Have you heard anything about this? I haven't. It wouldn't surprise me. This is what a lot of shows do. I think Doctor Who has even done this before. In fact, I know they've done this before, not necessarily the finale, but I remember I worked at an AMC when we had a screening of one of the episodes. It was either the Christmas special or whatever it was. And I remember it was a pretty big thing. We had people show up, one who had like a remote control Dalek and everything. Like, again, people dressing up. So it happens. Tina Guzman says, I hope it's good too. Do you see it projecting to do well, Odin? Are you talking about Deadpool? I think that it probably will track pretty well. I think that it has a very, very good chance of doing well. I don't have any early numbers on this, okay? But let me show you. These are the numbers that I do have. So going into the summer box office, because that's one of the other topics on the agenda tonight. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll end with just going into y'all's chats. So this is from Box Office Theory. So this is the person that used to make Box Office Pro relevant, taking their stuff to another location. Looks like he's no longer hiding some things behind the paywall, which is good, because I think he realized that wasn't working all that well. Because it makes sense. He's got to have some things, obviously, behind the paywall, but he also has to just kind of know yourself, man, and know that you gotta be careful with what you try to put behind the paywall. But anyway, what's coming out still, okay? So this coming weekend, we have The Young Woman and the Sea, because everyone wants to go see The Young Woman and the Sea. That's right, no one does. It's from Walt Disney. $4 to $8 million is the projected range right now. With a range like that, that's why Garfield coming in at number 1 this weekend is a possibility. Furiosa coming in at a number 2 or even a number 3 is a possibility too, right? So you have that going on. Then the weekend after that, you've got June 7th, and that brings Bad Boys Ride or Die. That's ranging from 48 to 58 million. So not a whole lot there. I don't know the franchise, though, so that might be okay for the franchise. As an overall opening weekend, though, it's nothing to write home about, right? Then you have The Watchers. That's from M. Night Shyamalan's son, getting involved in movies now, 13 to 19 million. That sounds about right. And then Inside Out 2, the range right now, according to even Box Office Theory, is still $75 to $94 million. Now, I have a lot of doubts about that, okay? They actually have the overall total domestic being between $250 and $330. Keep in mind that Elemental made $154 million domestic. And the projections right now is that it does $250. Now, Elemental was a new film. This is a sequel to a pretty successful Disney Pixar film. Okay? One that people have had interest in. The problem is that we have not seen really anything from Disney Animation that has shown any real tracking, that has shown any real success. I'm trying to rack my brain for a successful Disney animated film over the last few years. You go all the way back to a film like Lightyear, for instance. Massive bomb. And that's a film about Buzz Lightyear. It's still hard to think. I mean, obviously, I knew the things going on when that film came out. especially all the different political things going on. But it's still hard to conceive that that film was a massive flop. And now all of a sudden it's like, what have we seen? Every single thing that's come out, every single thing that they've released since then has either gone straight to Disney Plus or has been a box office disappointment. And so, though in my head it makes sense for Inside Out 2 to make money because it's like, no, yeah, it's Inside Out 2. The first Inside Out was very successful. Surely we'll see this again. I can't ignore what the other films have been doing, or really what the other films have not been doing. So yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to what are some of the early reviews for the film, and are there any indications of politicization? Because if there's any inclinations that they're playing around with kids' emotions in this movie, and that's a very powerful thing to drive parents away, if we see any of that, that could be a big problem, right? That could be a huge problem. And then that film itself will be a week removed from an R-rated film called The Bike Riders, which don't really know much about myself. So those are right now the early summer releases. That's as far as we go. So we'll probably get a new crop of films in his charting coming up in the next couple of days. We'll probably look out the next week after that. I think that there's another... Is there another Despicable Me coming out? I feel like there's always a new Despicable Me, or there's some other animated film coming out. They're making too many of them these days, it seems. But I have doubts. I really do have doubts about the prospects of Inside Out 2. Going back to Doctor Who, though, I don't know much else about it. I don't think it's going to be that impressive. I think it's going to match the ratings, which have not been good. Let's see. Thanatos Felicitas says, Furiosa sounds like the cleaning solution of Fabulosa. Nation says, a name like Furiosa here on Earth is in the post-apocalypse. Han Solo could be some alien thing and people could make up whatever. But here on Earth, we don't use derivatives of fury often, so it might be an interesting backstory. Exactly. Hardwick says, did you notice the symbolism in Fury Road of Max stepping off the platform at the end and the platform rising with Furiosa and other women on it? It's about the rise of matriarchy. I think that some people also who have way too much time on their hands, I'm going to be honest, like, no, I didn't notice it because that was the least of my concerns at that moment. And I think, again, you can read into... I could at one point say, oh, in Furiosa, okay... This is why that kind of logic and thinking, I think, oftentimes goes too far. In Furiosa, slight spoiler here for Furiosa, there's a moment when you see a man on top of a mountain looking down on Furiosa as she's dying. And it's insinuated that it might be Mad Max. That's the insinuation, that he saves her. But does he really save her? Who knows? But that would be like saying, oh, he's on that mountain looking down on her. That's showing the patriarchy. That's the kind of logic again. It's like, look, I'm all for saying, because it's clear as day, that there are feministic things in Fury Road. That type of thing, it's like, bro, you got too much time on your hands. Prince Green, was Chris Hemsworth good in Furiosa? Honestly, he was okay. And people have different gripes with the movie. You know what my biggest gripe with Furiosa is? The makeup department. Because they put this nose on Chris Hemsworth that is so distracting, it was hard to even notice his performance. The entire time he was performing, like, nose, prosthetic nose, fake prosthetic nose. Everyone knows what his face looks like. Why would you do that? It added nothing to the character at all. It was a massive distraction. And I think it took away from what could have been one of his better... The thing I say about his performance is that I wouldn't say that it's good, but at least he's having fun. At least he is having fun. All right. Let's see. Hardwick says, the issue with Anya Taylor-Joy for me is that her face gives me the uncanny valley reaction. She looks like some sort of mythical deer woman or an alien. Bro, dude, Hardwick. Look. There's no need for insults. That may not have been how you were intending it, but dude, you're like, she looks weird. She's a human being who has unique features. That'd be like saying, I can't take Odin seriously because he's bald and his head is just so shiny. It's so distracting. Some of you might actually feel that way. But bro, be better. Cthulhu, never pre-order a game, never pre-buy a movie ticket. Not always. Peter Fontaine, you'll have fun on Saturday with the Salty Crew. Kadish and Jude gave Furiosa a 5 out of 5. Vader gave it a 4 out of 5. They said it was a great movie. Alex was the lowest, 3.5 out of 5. Oh my gosh. Why? Sometimes I feel like they're just being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. That's honestly how I feel. Oh. Yeah, I can't wait to mention them. Oh, so what do you have to say about that prosthetic nose? What do you have to say about the terrible green screen effects? What do you have to say about the overlying story? Now, to be granted, to be fair, it does not surprise me altogether that Kadish likes it, because it is a long, slow burn bore, and Kadish always likes those movies. He always likes that. Remember, he was one of the few that was very, very high on the Cassian Andor series, which was a giant bore and a giant waste of time. He tends to like those things, though, so more power to him. It was a member says, laughing that you can only name 3 movies worth watching released 2024. It does say a lot. It really, really does say a lot. Absolutely. I would not put Dune 2 on that list, Justin C. It's pretty to look at, but it's not a good movie. And the changes that they especially make to the character of Chani are just too much. And Blazin64 says, is there any movie you're looking forward to coming up? The biggest one for me probably is going to be Deadpool Wolverine. The trailer for Beetlejuice makes me excited for that one, but I think that's going to be after the summer is over. There's really not a whole lot, though. I really don't. Tina B, Civil War, I don't support the lying media. Look, listen, anyone who tried to say that the movie Civil War was pushing an agenda, I'm sorry, they came in with their own agendas already. If you actually look at the movie from an objective lens, it does not push one political ideology or another. And in fact, it makes every person in every side look like the bad guy. Now, if that's not your idea of a good time, I respect that. But trying to say that it's some woke attempt to try to glorify the media is, I'm sorry, but ignorant. Because what you have is you have a person that's being shown. In fact, all of the media personalities are being shown as being some of the most despicable people in the world. They're literally walking amongst people dying, not doing anything because they're taking their picture. No one with common sense is going to think that's a good person. I'm sorry. So, yeah, the hate towards Civil War is being political. I'm sorry. It's people who are saying that have their own political biases that they can't get past. And that's coming from someone who again, has a political ideology myself. King and Rumsky says, deep question, are we just becoming a world where everyone will just be doing their own thing at home going forward with no or very little public interaction? In some cases, yes, I do. In fact, some people are already doing that. I think there's still enough places and enough cultures, especially in our country, where we have enough of an outdoorsy culture or enough of a hangout culture, right? You think especially of a lot of college cities, for instance. Now, I think it's some of the worst kind of fraternization that we can have because usually alcohol is involved, things like that. But there's enough of it where people are still getting out, right? They're still living in the world. But I do think that there is definitely a movement towards that, right? There are still a lot of more people today than at any time in history that are playing video games 24/7. And with the dawning of AI and with the development ever more of AR technologies, or VR technologies, virtual reality technologies, you're going to see more and more people getting plugged in and not wanting to leave. Abomination, you like Civil War, huh? But what kind of an American are you? Exactly. Rob D says, I feel like DVD sales are inflated because a lot of movies you buy on Blu-ray also include a DVD copy. Yeah, I do. The thing, and again, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm pretty sure when DVD sales are reported, it's talking about individual DVDs. So it's not talking about anything that's bundled together, I don't think. Prince Green, The Watchers is made by M. Night Shyamalan. No. The Watchers is made by his son. There's another film set to come out later this year that is by M. Night. M. Night is, I think, a producer on this movie. Yep. Ishana Night Shyamalan. That's his son. Ishana. Or sorry, his daughter. My bad. His daughter. my bad. His daughter. I knew it was one of his offspring, right? Anyway, so his daughter is directing and writing The Watchers. M. Night is listed as a producer. M. Night has his own film coming out, I think, either later this year or next year. Let me see. Yeah, Trap, coming out later this year. His film is Trap, and that is set to come out August 9th. So his daughter's film, June 7th. His movie coming out in August. Laura says, Encanto, I've actually never seen all of it all the way through, but it's not as, that's another film, and I know that Laura would agree with me. That's definitely not a film that is as bad. The issue with Encanto, though, right, as successful as that might have been on streaming especially, box office-wise, it was not a huge hit. And that's what I was going more so on the box office, because I think, was that one impacted by, I don't know if it was impacted by day and date. Yeah, it only made $231 million at the box office, right? And that film easily had a $150 million budget, so it definitely did not make its money back there. But it definitely has had a pretty good life on Disney Plus, and I think they've actually made some rides, attractions, or stage play like shows in the park. So it's got an audience, definitely, but still only $231 million at the box office. Let us see. Let's see. Abomination, Despicable Me 7, and Minions 3D. Despicable Me 4. Hardwick, have you seen the photos of Billy Zane playing Marlon Brando? The resemblance is uncanny. I have not, but I can't say I would be surprised by that. Shout out to Billy Zane. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up a little early tonight because I have a suspicion that my son may have pooped in his bed because he's still awake, and he tried it once, and I was listening to the monitor, and he was saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." And I was like, "What's up, bud? I have to poop." So I'm wondering if he tried to do that again this time. So we're going to wrap things up just for me to double check. Cthulhu, it's like Leonard Nimoy at the end of the Simpsons monorail episode claiming to have saved the day. Mad Max totally did something. Gary Benjamin says, gave Atlas a high score as a joke. Kadish also gave it a high rating. Really? Actually, that is funny because, again, it does not surprise me that Kadish would give that film a high score. Everything. Now, to be fair, I have not seen the film, so I can't say that for myself. Because a lot of people that hated Atlas also hated Civil War, so I can't say that they're necessarily a good judge in film. Daniel, hail to you. Just to see, Beetlejuice 2 slated for September 6th. Yeah, I mean, I knew it wasn't a summer release, but yeah, that's definitely up there for anticipated films for the year. Prince Green, if I haven't seen Civil War yet, would it be worth a watch in theaters, or would it just be better on streaming? At this point, I'm pretty sure it's out of theaters, or out of most theaters. So I would say, because it is a very divisive film, Prince Green, okay? I'm not going to deny that. It's a love or hate movie, okay? But if you go in knowing that it's not being political, I think it's going to be much more enjoyable for you, okay? So I would say I think it would be worth waiting on it to be available on streaming. And I'm planning on buying the physical media for it, and so I'll probably be hosting giveaways for that in the future. But yeah. Abomination says, people were talking about Christian Bale's character in Thor 4 having a nose when the character in the comics has no nose. Now Chris Hemsworth character Furiosa having a fake nose. Is this a case of you can't please everybody? Not necessarily. I think it's mostly a follow the source material in the first case. And in the second place, don't put a fake nose on someone who does not need a fake nose, and especially don't make it look so obvious. And Blazin, I thought you were talking about MCU Civil War. No. No. Rob D. Odin, how dare you misgender M. Night Shyamalan's child? Hashtag cancel Odin. It's official. Odin is a bigot. I'm going to say M. Night's daughter, but I hit the keyboard too fast. I hate it when that happens. I get it, man. I get it. Cthulhu, have a wonderful night. Hey, have a good night as well. Your son is Amber Heard, says Hardwick. No. He's a child. Difference is Amber Heard did that as an adult. It's all good. Kids first. Absolutely. Laura, you have a good one. Keely Chow, hope Thor didn't pull an Amber Heard. I do as well. Because it's not fun to clean at all. Speaking from experience. Anyone who's a parent out there probably also can speak from experience as well. But anyway, that's going to wrap things up for today. So Furiosa is a huge box office flop. Can't say that we can be that surprised by that. Looking like it's going to lose well over $100 million. We, of course, will follow that up this weekend. We'll get some official projections after the week 2 numbers, because we all know typically after week 2, we can make very solid and firm projections. Most films fall within a certain range, either doubling what they've made or having made almost, 75% of what they've made in those first 2 weeks. So we'll do a full analysis of that with the box office breakdown. Tomorrow morning, though, since I'm cutting this one a little bit short, don't worry, we can continue this conversation about Furiosa and also about the things to come ahead. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We have the Good Morning Asgard podcast. It is the Welcome to Asgard podcast, Good Morning Asgard edition. So please make sure to set your reminders. I'll try and create the event either sometime tonight or tomorrow morning early. So be on the lookout for that. Set your reminders. Set your alarms. 10 a.m. Eastern Time should be a very fun discussion, and won't have to worry about keeping track of the kids as I have been doing this entire stream, where it's like, okay, I keep pulling up the stream just to make sure that nothing's going on, but I do want to double check. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everybody, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my May supporters at the Chosen of Valhalla level, starting off with my Patreon supporters, Father Luca Illich. Hail to you, Father. Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, which is Eagle Rider. And also Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. To my Subscribe Star peeps, starting off with Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name. And ZK-Man, check him out over at xtheboundaries.co. And also, lastly, to my YouTube member at the Chosen of Valhalla level, Mr. Roy, who is, of course, awesome, as all of my Chosen are amazing. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, make sure to check out the top link in the video description below. You can also get access to things like exclusive podcasts and giveaways. I do a giveaways channel on Discord if you are a member at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, and a ton of other stuff. So check out more information about that in that top link below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.